And Eazy said, "You know this guy Suge Knight?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, I'm going to kill him."
Eazy-E wanted Suge Knight dead, not just musically crushed, literally gone. This wasn't some friendly record label scuffle. This was a full-blown war between two street-hardened titans who helped shape the sound and danger of West Coast hip-hop. One side had Eric Eazy-E Wright, the visionary founder of NWA and Ruthless Records, a guy who turned gangsta rap into a national headline. The other, Suge Knight, a former bodyguard with fists the size of baseball mitts and a reputation for getting what he wanted, by any means. Their beef didn't start on wax. It started in dark offices, back rooms, and allegedly at gunpoint. By the time it hit the streets, the industry, and eventually the headlines, it was already too late to stop. This is the true, shocking story of how one violent standoff and a broken friendship sparked the rise of Death Row Records, nearly led to murder, and rewrote the rules of hip-hop forever. But what actually went down between Suge and Eazy that made the West Coast erupt? Let's rewind the tape and uncover the story you were never supposed to hear. By 1987, Compton's underground scene was exploding, and at the center of it was a short, sharp hustler named Eric Eazy-E Wright. Eazy turned drug money into studio time, teamed up with music manager Jerry Heller, and launched Ruthless Records, a label that would redefine hip-hop. Ruthless quickly signed NWA, and within a year, the group's music was terrifying politicians and thrilling fans. But behind the scenes, the business was getting ugly. Ice Cube walked out in '89 over money, and Dr. Dre, he was next. Fed up with contracts he thought favored Eazy and Heller, that's when Suge Knight entered the picture. A towering ex-bodyguard with ties to the streets. Suge wasn't looking to negotiate. He was looking to take what he wanted. By 1991, Suge had started whispering in Dre's ear. He promised freedom, fame, and full control. When words didn't work, Suge switched to intimidation. According to people close to Ruthless, Suge and his crew stormed into a meeting carrying pipes and bats, threatening Eazy until he signed away Dr. Dre, the DOC, and Michelle. That one meeting changed everything.
And he had like 100 OG Crips with him. And then, it was a little controversy going on, but it got squashed. But, Suge had kind of threatened Eazy.
With that single act, Death Row Records was born, and Suge Knight went from Dre's bodyguard to his new business partner. Eazy-E was furious. He'd been played, humiliated, and robbed of his biggest star. But instead of backing down, he got angry and dangerous.
He said, "This guy's going to be a problem, and I think I should kill him." And I said, "Let me think this." I said, "Let me think this thing through."
That wasn't a metaphor. Eazy meant every word. Heller talked him down, reminding him Ruthless was making millions every month, but that didn't cool the rage. Years later, Heller admitted he regretted stopping him.
I said, "That just doesn't make any sense to me. And you know something? I should have let him kill him."
Yeah.
I would have done the world a favor. He would have done it for sure, by himself.
It was the moment the feud turned personal, and it set off a chain reaction that would reshape the West Coast forever. From that point on, it wasn't just about music or money anymore. It was war. By early 1991, Dr. Dre was ready to walk. He'd built the sound of Ruthless Records, turned NWA into a household name, and put Compton on the map. But he wasn't seeing the rewards. Eazy-E and Jerry Heller controlled the contracts, and Dre felt boxed in, underpaid, and powerless. That's when Suge Knight entered the picture. To most, Suge was still just a bodyguard, 6'3", broad-shouldered, and feared in the streets. But behind that presence was a man who understood leverage. He knew the game wasn't about talent anymore. It was about control. Suge started hanging around Dre, listening to him complain about Ruthless, and promising he could fix everything. He wasn't bluffing. Suge had already learned how to weaponize fear. When contracts didn't bend, he made people bend. By the spring of 1991, Dre, the DOC, and Michelle all wanted out. They were frustrated, broke, and tired of watching Ruthless get rich off their work. But there was only one person standing in the way, Eazy-E. That's when Suge made his move. According to those who were there, Suge didn't come with lawyers. He came with muscle, pipes, bats, and a team of enforcers walked into Eazy's meeting and made their demands clear. Release Dr. Dre and the others, or face the consequences. The result was fast and brutal. Eazy signed the papers. Whether it was fear, strategy, or shock, nobody knows for sure. But that day, Dr. Dre walked out of Ruthless, and Suge Knight walked into history. That single act would change the entire trajectory of West Coast rap. Dr. Dre was free. And Suge wasted no time turning that freedom into Death Row Records. Almost overnight, Suge went from Dre's muscle to his partner, shaping a label that would soon dominate the charts and terrify the competition. Eazy-E, meanwhile, was left humiliated. He'd built an empire, only to watch his own artists get stolen through intimidation and street tactics. And for Eazy, this wasn't over. He was furious, not just at Suge, but at Dr. That betrayal cut deep. And from that moment on, Eazy wanted revenge. The peace between Ruthless and Death Row was gone forever, and what came next would turn that business feud into a full-blown war. After that infamous confrontation, the power dynamic in West Coast hip-hop changed overnight. Dr. Dre was gone, the DOC was gone, Michelle was gone, and Eazy-E, the man who built Ruthless Records from nothing, was left standing in the ruins of his own empire. For weeks, Eazy barely spoke publicly, but inside the Ruthless offices, he was boiling. Everyone around him could feel it. The silence, the tension, the cold looks. He wasn't just angry at Suge Knight, he was embarrassed. The man who once ruled Compton's music scene had been forced into submission. And for someone like Eazy, that humiliation cut deeper than any contract dispute ever could. He knew one thing: if Suge came at him again, there would be no second chance. So, he fortified. He started surrounding himself with real protection. Men who didn't just talk tough, but lived that life. One of them was Mike Klein, a former Israeli commando who quickly became Eazy's personal security head. Klein wasn't there to look intimidating. He was there to make sure no one ever tried to strong-arm Eazy again.
I heard was, well, if he ever comes to the office uninvited, he's going to go out in a box.
According to people who worked at Ruthless at the time, Klein and his crew confronted Suge directly and let him know that if he ever pulled another stunt, he wouldn't walk away from it. From that day forward, Suge never set foot near Ruthless again. Even the most feared man in hip-hop learned there were limits to who he could intimidate. But for Eazy, the fight wasn't over. It had just shifted. He'd lost his star producer and his label's momentum, but not his pride. And he wasn't about to let Death Row rewrite history. As Death Row exploded with success, the chronic blasting from every radio, Dr. Dre's name dominating the charts, Eazy watched from the sidelines. Every beat, every lyric felt like a reminder of what he'd built and what had been taken from him. And the worst part? Hidden inside Dre's new music were insults, sly jabs aimed directly at Eazy-E, mocking the man who had made him famous in the first place. It wasn't just music anymore. It was war on wax. And if Death Row wanted to play that game, Eazy was going to hit back harder than anyone expected. The streets were divided. Compton was split between two camps: Ruthless loyalists who still rode for Eazy, and Death Row believers who followed Dre's new sound. Hip-hop had seen competition before, but nothing like this. This wasn't about record sales anymore. It was personal, built on betrayal, revenge, and pride. And when Eazy finally decided to strike back, he didn't do it quietly. He was about to turn his fury into one of the most legendary diss records of all time and take the war straight to Dr. Dre's doorstep. By 1992, the West Coast was in chaos. Death Row Records was rising like a storm. Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Suge Knight had taken over the airwaves, leaving Ruthless in the shadows. And for Eazy-E, watching it happen was torture. The people he'd helped build were now laughing in his face. Even the fans were switching sides, chanting Death Row at shows where Eazy used to own the stage. But behind that calm exterior, Eazy was losing patience. He wasn't just angry about the business, he was angry about the betrayal. Dr. Dre had been like a brother, Suge Knight just a hired hand. Now both were profiting off what he built. To Eazy, it wasn't just disrespect, it was personal robbery. In private, he started talking about settling things for good. Friends close to him later admitted that Eazy-E wasn't just throwing around words. He was seriously considering getting rid of Suge Knight. He told people Suge was bad for business, bad for music, and bad for the culture. And he wasn't wrong. Even back then, everyone could see how violent things were getting under Suge's watch. That's when Eazy sat down with his manager Jerry Heller and dropped a bombshell.
He said, "This guy's going to be a problem, and I think I should kill him." And I said, "Let me think this. I said, let me think this thing through."
It was chilling. Heller didn't think Eazy was bluffing. He'd seen that look before, cold, focused, and deadly serious. Eazy wasn't talking about a fight or a threat. He was talking about ending Suge Knight's rise before it went any further, but Heller stopped him. He told Eazy to think bigger. that killing Suge would destroy everything they had built. Ruthless was still making millions. The label had a name, a legacy, and a future. Throwing it away for revenge, he said, would be suicide. Eazy paused and walked away from the plan, but the anger never left him. It just changed form. From that moment on, he focused his fury into the studio, planning a comeback through music. If he couldn't destroy Suge in the streets, he'd do it on the charts. And in true Eazy-E fashion, he didn't just want to clap back. He wanted to humiliate his enemies in front of the whole world. Heller would later admit he sometimes regretted talking Eazy out of it, because as Death Row's empire grew, so did the chaos surrounding it. And many wondered if things would have gone differently if Eazy had taken action that day. The war had now turned psychological. Eazy was outnumbered, outfunded, and outgunned, but he still had the one weapon Suge and Dre could never touch: his story, and soon he was about to weaponize it through a record that would shake the industry to its core. Once Eazy-E decided not to go after Suge physically, he chose a different battlefield: the booth. Music had always been his weapon, and now he was going to use it to strike back. But first, Suge and Dre made their move. In December of 1992, Dr. Dre released The Chronic, a masterpiece that redefined the West Coast sound. It was funky, smooth, and ruthless, but beneath the polished beats was venom. Hidden in the lyrics of Dre Day were insults aimed squarely at Eazy-E. The music video took it even further, mocking him with a lookalike actor in a jerry curl and tight suit, signing fake contracts and getting laughed off screen. Eazy watched the video in silence. Those were the men he'd made famous, and now they were clowning him in front of the world. It wasn't just disrespect, it was an open declaration of war.
Force him into doing nothing. Eazy is a gangster. Eazy is this big-time gangster, right?
The industry loved it. The Chronic went multi-platinum. Dre became the face of West Coast rap, and Death Row was untouchable. To most people, Eazy-E was finished, but to anyone who knew him, that was exactly when he was most dangerous. Eazy took a few months of silence, letting the world believe he was done. And then, in August of 1993, he struck back. Out of nowhere, he dropped Real Muthaphuckkin G's, a diss so cold, so precise, it silenced every critic who said he'd fallen off. In the record, Eazy called out Dre and Snoop by name, exposing them as studio gangsters and mocking their gang affiliations. The track was pure fire, not just clever lyrics, but real anger, controlled and deliberate. Even the music video made a statement, filmed in Compton, surrounded by the same streets Dre had left behind. Fans couldn't believe it. The man everyone counted out had just landed a knockout punch. And what made it hit harder was the authenticity. Eazy wasn't pretending to be anything. He was Compton. To his fans, that made him untouchable. Almost overnight, Real Muthaphuckkin G's became an anthem. It wasn't just a comeback, it was revenge. Eazy had gone from humiliated to heroic, proving that Ruthless Records still had bite. Even the industry started paying attention again. For the first time since The Chronic, the balance was shifting.
That was a hard diss. It was on nigga head. Good shit.
But behind the diss tracks and the swagger, Eazy knew something deeper was happening. This wasn't just a rap beef anymore. It was the reflection of a broken brotherhood, torn apart by greed, betrayal, and ego. Every verse was a reminder of what they once built together, and what had been destroyed in the process. The war on wax had made headlines, but for Eazy-E and Suge Knight, it was never just about music. Underneath the rhymes and taunts, the tension was still very real, and the violence surrounding Death Row was only getting darker. By 1993, the West Coast wasn't just divided, it was at war. Eazy-E's Real Muthaphuckkin G's had reignited the feud, but this time the battle stretched far beyond the studio. Behind the scenes, lawyers were lining up, contracts were being reviewed, and the record business was turning into a full-blown battlefield. Eazy had lost Dr. Dre, but not the rights to everything Dre had built. Through old Ruthless contracts, Eazy still owned royalties from NWA and early Dre material, meaning every time The Chronic sold another copy, a piece of the profit went right into Eazy's pocket. It was poetic revenge. Death Row might have the fame, but Eazy was still getting paid. When Suge Knight found out, he was furious. Eazy-E, the man he'd humiliated, was quietly earning money off Death Row's biggest success. To Suge, that wasn't just business, that was an insult. And in true Suge fashion, he wanted to settle it his way. Off paper, off record. But Eazy didn't flinch. He'd already survived Suge once, and this time, he was fighting with contracts instead of fists. Ruthless Records filed multiple legal challenges against Death Row, claiming the company had used intimidation and illegal means to lure Dre away. It was one of the first times in hip-hop history that a label owner was accusing another of racketeering, and for once, Suge was being forced to play defense. In public, though, both sides pretended it was all about the music. Death Row kept releasing hits, and Eazy kept throwing shots. But behind the closed doors of the industry, everyone knew this was deeper than rap. It was business warfare with millions on the line and egos too big to back down. And the irony, while the feud was bleeding both sides dry, they were making each other richer. Eazy's stake in the old Dre contracts meant that as Death Row grew, Ruthless got paid. It was the ultimate checkmate, the quiet victory that Eazy never bragged about but always knew he'd earned. Still, something about it didn't sit right with him. Winning on paper wasn't enough. Eazy was a street legend. He wanted to see his enemies fall the way they'd made him fall. So instead of celebrating, he doubled down. He started signing new artists, building new acts, and preparing to relaunch Ruthless for a new era. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about legacy. While Eazy planned his comeback, Suge Knight's empire was starting to show cracks. Death Row was swimming in success, but also chaos. Endless legal issues, street fights, and rumors of intimidation tactics that made even industry veterans nervous. What started as business dominance was slowly turning into something darker. And as Eazy watched the chaos unfold, he couldn't help but feel that balance was finally returning. For once, Ruthless was calm, organized, and profitable, while Death Row was tearing itself apart from the inside. It was poetic justice, and Eazy could sense that the tables were finally turning. But he didn't know that fate had one last twist waiting for him, one that no amount of money, power, or pride could stop. By 1994, the war between Ruthless and Death Row had become the heartbeat of West Coast hip-hop. The music was only half the story. The real drama was happening in the streets, the clubs, and the boardrooms. Suge Knight ran Los Angeles like a general, surrounded by bodyguards, cars, and fear. But Eazy-E wasn't backing down. After years of chaos, Eazy started making quiet moves, not for revenge, but for respect. He rebuilt his team, replacing the hangers-on with people who actually knew how to protect him. He didn't want to play defense anymore. He wanted to send a message. Ruthless Records was still standing. Behind the scenes, Suge was trying to expand his reach, shaking hands with producers, promoters, anyone he thought could be useful. And when one of those meetings crossed into Eazy's territory, the confrontation everyone feared almost happened again. Only this time, Suge was the one who backed off. Eazy's new head of security, Mike Klein, made sure that Klein wasn't a rapper, wasn't a gangster, but he was a man with a history that commanded silence when he spoke. He and his team of trained professionals made it clear that Ruthless wasn't to be touched again, and that if Suge ever tried it, he wouldn't walk away from it this time. Word spread fast across Los Angeles. Eazy wasn't scared anymore. In fact, some say Suge started avoiding certain parts of town altogether. For the first time in years, the fear that Suge inspired had turned right back on him. Eazy could feel it too. He was walking taller, laughing more. He'd survived the threats, the intimidation, the humiliation, and come out on top. Ruthless was stable again. The money was good, the artists were loyal, and his comeback was finally complete. But Eazy wasn't done proving a point. He wanted the world to see that the kid from Compton, the one everyone called crazy, reckless, and too street to last, had built something that even Suge Knight couldn't destroy. And as Death Row spiraled into legal trouble, Eazy's own story started to feel like a full circle moment. The man who once ruled through fear was now the one looking over his shoulder. The man who had everything was now the one losing control. Eazy had taken his power back, quietly, strategically, and without lifting a finger. But while he finally had the upper hand, something else was coming. Something no one could fight, not even him. Because before Eazy-E could fully enjoy the victory he'd waited years for, fate would pull the rug out from under him. By early 1995, it seemed like Eazy-E was finally winning his war. Ruthless Records was stable again. New artists were coming in, and for the first time in years, his name was being mentioned without the word beef attached to it. He was planning a massive comeback, new deals, new partnerships, and maybe even a chance to finally make peace with the past. But then, suddenly, everything changed. In February of that year, Eazy-E started getting sick. At first, he brushed it off, get a cough, shortness of breath, nothing serious. He was still running meetings, still making plans, still laughing that loud, sharp laugh everyone around him knew so well. But the illness kept getting worse. Within weeks, he could barely breathe. Friends and family begged him to go to the hospital. When he finally did, doctors gave him a diagnosis that shocked everyone: AIDS. Eazy-E, the godfather of gangsta rap, the man who'd survived the streets, business wars, and Suge Knight himself was dying. The news spread like wildfire. Fans couldn't believe it. Some said it was karma, others said it was fate, but nobody expected it to happen so fast. On March 16, 1995, Eazy publicly announced his diagnosis, issuing a statement thanking his supporters and warning others to be careful. Just 10 days later, on March 26th, he was gone. Eazy-E was only 31 years old. The music world stood still. Tributes poured in from across the country, even from people who had once called him an enemy. Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, Dr. Dre. All of them felt the loss because, deep down, they knew there would never be another like him. The streets of Compton mourned for weeks. Ruthless Records fell silent, but in the months that followed, that silence turned to whispers. Fans, insiders, even some of Eazy's old friends began asking the same question. How did he get sick so fast? Why did his health deteriorate in just a matter of weeks? Then came the rumor that changed everything. During an interview years later, Suge Knight went on national television and made a disturbing joke.
They get blood from somebody with AIDS, and then they shoot you with it.
Oh, so that seems bad.
That's a slow death.
Yeah.
Easy thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, no. Okay.
The audience laughed nervously, but no one else was laughing. That offhand comment sparked years of speculation and conspiracy theories that have never fully gone away. Did someone intentionally infect Eazy? Was it revenge? Or was it just Suge being Suge, reckless, insensitive, and too proud to know when to shut up? To this day, there's no proof that anyone did anything to Eazy-E. Doctors confirmed his diagnosis, and his family has always stood by the official story. But Suge's words, that chilling, smug joke, cast a shadow that would linger over his legacy forever. And maybe that's the cruelest part of all. After years of surviving everything life threw at him, Eazy-E didn't fall to bullets, betrayal, or street wars. He was taken out by something silent, invisible, and that made his death even harder for fans to accept. Because for a man who once seemed unstoppable, the end came like a whisper. Quick, sudden, and still, decades later, surrounded by mystery. When Eazy-E died, it wasn't just the loss of a man, it was the closing of an era. The West Coast had been built on his foundation. Without Eazy, there would have been no NWA, no Dr. Dre, no Death Row. Even Suge Knight, the man who once stood against him, owed his empire to the very person he tried to crush. After Eazy's passing, the energy in Los Angeles shifted. Death Row was still at its peak, releasing hit after hit, but the darkness behind the success was starting to show. The intimidation, the violence, the endless chaos, it all began catching up. And within just a few years, the same empire that had humiliated Eazy-E started collapsing under its own weight. Dr. Dre left Death Row in 1996, walking away with nothing but his name. Snoop Dogg followed soon after, tired of the constant paranoia. And Suge Knight, the man who once ruled with fear, was now drowning in lawsuits, violence, and eventually prison time. It was as if the ghosts of every grudge and betrayal had come back to collect. Meanwhile, Eazy's legacy didn't fade, it grew. Artists who came after him, from Bone Thugs and Harmony to Ice Cube to Kendrick Lamar, all carried a piece of his story. Eazy was more than just a rapper. He was a visionary who showed the world what raw, unapologetic truth looked like. He didn't just start a movement, he embodied one.
Also gotta say, peace to the family and children of Eazy-E. Word up.
Looking back now, it's hard not to see the irony. Two men from the same streets, both trying to dominate the game, ended up shaping each other's legacies in ways they could never have imagined. Eazy-E's death cemented him as a legend. Suge Knight's downfall turned him into a cautionary tale. And through it all, one truth remained. Their feud built the foundation for the West Coast rap empire. The sound, the style, the attitude, all of it came from that conflict. The Ruthless versus Death Row Showdown wasn't just about music. It was about control, power, and survival. Decades later, fans still argue about who really won. But maybe that's the point. There were no winners, just two men chasing power until the war consumed them both. Eazy's rise and fall showed the cost of building an empire from the streets. Suge's story showed what happens when that power turns toxic. Together, they wrote one of the most unforgettable chapters in hip-hop history, one that began in Compton, ended in tragedy, and changed everything in between. In the end, the story of Eazy-E and Suge Knight isn't just about music, it's about power, how it's earned, how it's abused, and how easily it can destroy the people who chase it. Eazy-E started as a street hustler with a dream. He turned that dream into Ruthless Records, launched a movement, and gave a voice to a generation that had never been heard. But his empire was built in a world where loyalty had a price, and betrayal was always one deal away. Suge Knight, on the other hand, represented the darker side of that same ambition. He used fear as currency, intimidation as strategy, and in doing so, built one of the most powerful labels in history, only to watch it crumble under the same chaos that fueled it. Their lives ran in opposite directions, but their stories are forever linked. Without Suge, Death Row wouldn't have existed. Without Eazy, there would have been no blueprint for Death Row to follow. They were both kings of their time, and both victims of the same game.
As you come, easy life. The Lord has given, the Lord has received. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
Eazy once said, "You can't make peace with a man who has no soul." Maybe that was his way of admitting what this industry really was, a war zone disguised as business. Decades later, we still talk about them, not just because of what they did, but because of what they represented. The dream and the danger of chasing greatness in a world where power means everything. Eazy-E died a legend. Suge Knight lives as a warning, and their feud, brutal, tragic, and unforgettable, will always stand as the story that built the West Coast and nearly destroyed it. If you found this story as wild as we did, hit that like button, drop a comment on who you think really won this feud, and make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into hip-hop's most untold stories.